We are live here. We are so excited for Dr. Bernie Siegel. I'm going to talk about his bio, but Dr. Bernie Siegel, we were listening to an interview of him, and we were so inspired that we said we need to interview Dr. Bernie Siegel. There's so many topics that we're going to go into today about health, about mystical, about healing. And Dr. Bernie here, he has been doing it for a long time. So Dr. Bernie Siegel is an American writer and retired pediatric surgeon. He writes on the relationship between the patient and the healing process. He is known for his best selling book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. He is a pioneer between the connection of laughter and health. He has an up and coming book called Life, a Mystical Miracle, and we will dig into and dive into a ton of topics today. Dr. Bernie, welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Bernie, we are honored having you here. Now, can you tell us about where did you grow up, Dr. Bernie?
Where did I grow up?
Yes.
In Brooklyn, New York. The nice part of that is, in these little streets in New York, everybody was family. So race, religion, nothing mattered. We were all there living together. And one of the funniest things that happened was my best friend, Carmine Berzamato. I met Jesus on the wall in his house. I said, "Who's that guy? You have that picture hanging in your living room." And I was introduced to Jesus because I didn't know who he was. My grandparents were Orthodox Jewish. They had escaped from Russia to save their lives. So we were living with them. And one day when I stopped at Carmine's house, they were still eating breakfast because we were going to go to school. We walked to school together. And his mother said, "Hey, you want to sit down and have something to eat?" I said, "Sure." So I sat down and I said, "This is good. What do you call it?" She said, "It's called bacon." I said, "Well, I got to tell my parents and grandparents about it. It's good." And that evening, I said I had something wonderful at Carmine's house called bacon. And I thought my grandfather was going to faint, But he didn't go across the street and yell at Carmine's mother. It was just, that was our life together. Because Carmine stayed with me on Jewish holidays and I hung out with him on Christian holidays. So we skipped school extra days. We did a lot of things that our parents didn't know. But again, everybody knew you. So you could walk into a store and go home with things without paying for them because they knew you and who your parents were. And I have to say, the other side of New York is that, that was a neighborhood. But you can grow up in New York and people expect you to be independent and able to take care of yourself. And you're treated differently in a hospital. So in Montana, the cancer cure rate is higher than in Manhattan. And you'd say, why? There are a lot of good doctors in New York. Yeah, but in Montana, everybody knows their doctor because there are a smaller number of people there. So you know your neighbor and you're treated by someone who knows you. And that makes a difference. I never forget, we were in one community where one of the kids said before we started home, "I want to ride the bike before we get in the car." Well, he had an accident on the bike and was really battered. He fell off it on the road. And I began to hear car horns going off. And because I said, "How do we help him? We're in the middle of nowhere. How do we get in touch? I don't know phone numbers, who to call." And all these car horns went off. And I said, "What's all the noise about?" And the people with me said, "That's how we get help. Once you hear a car horn, you know something happened. So you get help and then you go there." And to me, that was so different, than if something happens to you in New York City, it's, well, you're a New Yorker, you'll take care of yourself. You're all right. And that's not so. Wow. And then when the doctors in New York get sick or their families do, then they realize what I'm talking about is so true.
Mm. Dr. Bernie, I love how you said you grew up in a community where you just take bread maybe and then they'll just write it for you. You don't have to pay. I kind of grew up like that in the Philippines. Well, I'll just take and they'll add it all our debt towards the end of the month and my parents would pay for it. That is such a beautiful thing because
Yeah.
there's community and trust and it was so open.
One that is even funnier was my sister began to accumulate a lot of change on her dresser in her bedroom. And we finally said to her, "Where are you getting all that money?" She said, "Oh, people leave it on the newspapers at the candy store." And we all laughed because she thought it was just money lying there. She didn't realize people took a paper, threw the money down, and walked away, you know? But the guy
Wow.
who owned the store, again, he didn't yell at us or say, "Well, bring me the money." He laughed too, but at least he knew what was happening, that it was my sister who was going home with the money. So they put a box there so she couldn't get into it and take it anymore.
Well, I have to say, I did it at one point. My grandfather was the treasurer of a certain community, and he has coins everywhere when he counts. And I thought anything that falls on the floor is free, so I'll take it. So I didn't know that, but that's a beautiful thing. Now, Dr. Bernie, is that always in your gene? Do you always wanted to be a doctor?
It has a lot to do with my past life, why I became a surgeon.
Mm.
And you see, I've had all these experiences. Nothing I sought, they happened to me. Somebody I know, I was so busy one day and she called me and I said, "I don't have time to talk." She said, "Why are you living this life?" And I went into a trance. And I said to her, "Oh my God." She said, "I didn't want to upset you. What's happening?" I see myself with a sword in hand killing. And I said, maybe that's why I became a surgeon, to help people with a knife. And I know that that's true. I know it's why our house was a zoo. If you read some of my other books, like Love, Animals, and Miracles, we were always rescuing everything. And when that past life experience happened to me, I knew I was making up for it in this life. And to make a long story short, I don't know if you know what to tell people, but I killed my wife in a past life. And I cried for hours when that came to me and I saw that. But I realized our being married in this life healed our families. It brought us together. Now we were one family.
Yeah.
So,
Dr. Siegel, can you tell me that? That's a big, and a lot of people probably having a hard time understanding that.
right.
How did you kill your wife in a past life? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, because I learned a lot and I got therapy too to help me understand. I was a knight in Ireland. You know, I was a warrior. And my Lord said to me, "I want you to kill the neighbor's daughter. He's intruding on our land. He won't listen to me. I want you to kill her." I said, "Why don't I kill him? He's the problem." "No, I want you to kill her daughter." I said, "What if I don't? I'll kill you. I'm going." And I went. And I learned, I lied to them. I said, "I'm passing through. Can I spend the night?" And they said, "Sure." I found out where the daughter's room was, went up there that night to kill her in her sleep so it wouldn't be so bad. She had a dog. The dog started growling. I killed the dog so he wouldn't attack me. That woke up the young lady, and then she turned over in bed, and I saw my wife, and I killed her. And I cried for 3 or 4 hours. It was horrendous. I went to get therapy. Now, also, I went back to tell my Lord, "Okay, I did that. Are you happy now?" He said, "I didn't do it. You did it." I went and I got therapy. And the first thing the Jungian therapist said to me when I said, "My Lord said, kill the neighbor's daughter," he said, "You hear what you're saying?" "What?" "My Lord." I said, "It's the Lord of the castle." He said, "No, Bernie, it's your Lord. Go home and relive this." And as soon as he said that to me, I knew it was a matter of trust, because I've always questioned Abraham's decision. he's asked to sacrifice his child. I mean, I would have said to God, hey, excuse me, take me, leave my kids alone. You know, or if I were Jesus, I would have jumped off the cross to impress everybody and said, do you understand? Look at the miracles I can perform. Now pay attention to me. But they had faith in their Lord. So I go back and I relived it, is what he said. My Lord says, kill the neighbor's daughter. I said, fine, I'm going. He said, no, I needed to know you had faith in me. Go and bring them here so we can resolve this. And I did. And the ultimate solution was, why don't you two get married? See? Then the land we're fighting over can be your wedding gift. And we have nothing to fight over anymore because we'll all be one. And I realized that was resolved in this life. When my wife and I met, we were working at a day camp. And there are no coincidences. So we were watching the children. I was with first grade boys. She was the head counselor of first grade girls. And I was saying how nice it was that the pool is open at night. You could come and take a swim. Because this was a local, neighborhood day camp. And she said to me, are you asking me for a date? And I wasn't. But I said, yes. Oh, yes, of course I am. And she said, all right. And so, again, no coincidence. That's how we met, how life started. And we came together. And I can remember reading, because we had 5 children, stories to the kids where I would start crying. And they'd say, what are you crying about? It's a story. But one was about a farmer buying the land and then hitting something, digging it up and finding out it's a treasure. So he called the owner that he bought it from and said, here, this is yours. And the owner said, no, you bought the farm, it's yours. No, this was here before I bought it, it's yours. And they're having an argument. And a stranger comes by and says, hey, what are you two fighting over? Oh, you got a son, you got a daughter, tell them to get married and give them this as a wedding present. And I realized that's how we solved our family's problem, by getting married. And the other was a story called Wolfen, in which a knight comes home from the wars, knows his wife has given birth to a baby. So he runs up to the nursery, sees it covered in blood, the crib upside down, his dog sitting there. So he kills his dog, thinking this dog has killed my child. But when he picks up the crib, he finds a dead wolf and his healthy baby.
Wow. Dr. Verney, I love all this story. I'm like fascinated by it. But can you tell me?
Let me just say that when I read those things, I burst out crying, reading them to the children. And they'd say, what are you crying about? It's a story. But I realized later it was because I had lived those messages, and they were more than stories to me.
Wow. Dr. Verney, can you tell us about your the study of like laughter is the best medicine? Can you tell us, what's behind it?
Well, literally, let me give it the scientific side. A student asked my help. He said, because his professor thought he was crazy. He said, I want to study what happens in actors when they're in a comedy or a tragedy. Do, blood tests. And my professor thinks that's nonsense. Why should an actor be affected? But I called his professor and I said, yes, it would be. It would happen. Let him do it. So he did. And what he showed was when he drew the blood of this male and female, while they were in a comedy, immune function went up, stress hormone levels were down. The other script he gave him was the man murders her husband and they meet. And of course, when that happened, the immune function went way down, the stress hormone levels went up. Well, I always say Monday morning, which is true, we have more heart attacks, strokes, suicides, and illnesses. So you can't separate your life from your health. And when doctors would say to me, why are you blaming your patients? I said, what are you talking about? You keep saying to them, what's going on in your life? What's happening? What are you experiencing? I said, I'm not blaming them. I'm trying to get them to understand why they got sick at a certain time in their life. What's happening. And one of the things I found fascinating was if you said to people when they're having a problem, what word would you use to describe your problem? Then I say, how does that word fit your life? See? And what do we need to eliminate from your life? And I don't know how I got started doing that. Maybe it was just hearing people describe what they're going through. But 2 examples. One, a lady with severe migraine headaches, about to be admitted to the hospital. She said the word was pressure. And I said, let's do a meditation, relieve the pressure in your life, blah, blah. And her headache disappeared. And the nurse said to me later, the pressure is her marriage. She's on the way home to straighten that out. Another person said failure. I said, how does failure fit your life? Well, my body failed. I have cancer. I said, that's not my question. Oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. Boom. And sometimes reporters would come because they all thought, when I first started doing this work, it's the controversial Dr. Siegel. So we're here to give him a hard time in the interview. Because everybody thinks he's crazy. So we got to show him that he's crazy. And I said, draw a picture and then I'll have time to talk to you, for the interview. And this reporter drew a picture of herself with a clock on the wall behind her. One hand pointed at number 6. I thought, I got to shake her up. So I won't say, why is 6 important to you? I just said, what happened when you were 6 years old? I don't like deadlines. What happened when you were 6 years old? There's only one hand on the clock. And then she burst into tears and talked about being sexually abused. Mm-hmm. And you see how the interview was very different after that. So I learned from really looking into myself, going to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross workshop, drawing a picture for her. And she knew more about me and my life from this outdoor scene I drew. What are you covering up? Why do you ask that? You used a white crayon. The page is already white. You don't need to add a layer. What are you covering up? Why is 11 important? Why are you asking that? You drew 11 trees. And I had, I said, oh, I'm doing this 11 months. And I mean, every time she'd ask me a question, there was a reason. So yeah, I went to the hospital with crayons and got patients to draw pictures. And then they also drew anatomy. I mean, they would show me what was going on inside their body when they drew pictures. And all kinds of things. And even when patients are ready to die, purple's a spiritual color. You'd see a balloon or a kite going up in the sky, and you knew they were ready to let go. And you could bring that up for them so they could share it with their family and their doctors, and do what felt right for them. And again, to talk about feelings, and I'm talking about dying, the best hospices, they always say, if you want to go to a good hospice, ask them if they have dropouts or graduations. Now, why do I say that? Because you go there to get your life in order before you die, and then you get your life in order and you feel so much better, you decide to go home. So the ones that really do a good job literally have graduations and dropouts because they have a party for people and then they send them home because they're feeling better. And that's the other thing I saw with my patients. There are a lot of people I meet I thought were dead. See? And I'd say, why don't you come back to the office? Well, my doctor's just telling me when I'm going to die, what's going to happen. What's the point of going back? But if you'd say, how come you didn't die? See, what doctors are taught is, oh, they must have had a spontaneous remission. No, it's not spontaneous. They changed their life. That's what happened. And just to give you a quote from the man who moved to Colorado to die in the mountains where it was so beautiful. A year later, I called the family to say, why didn't you invite me to the funeral? I told you I wanted to come. He answered the phone. And he said, it was so beautiful here, I forgot to die. And we both busted out laughing. So there are people who reclaimed their life. You see, your parents say, we don't want you to be a violinist. We're not proud of saying that to the neighbors. You go to law school. But what does he do when he gets cancer? He shuts his office, starts playing his violin again, gets a job in an orchestra, and doesn't die. So I can go on telling those stories. But what I learned was when people began to live their life, their body got a live message. Well, this is, I would say, to sum it up, I always say to people, love your body. And this woman had polio as a child, so she'd lost a lot of muscle and, was uncomfortable with her body. She said, I never liked it because it didn't look good. And then she developed another neurological disease and was told that she's going to die of it. And she said, I didn't want to die not liking myself and my body. So I laid down naked in front of the mirror and loved myself. And she said, I did it inch by inch. I start on my toes, and then I'd move up a few inches at a time over my whole body. And her disease went into complete remission, and she didn't die. And there were other patients who said things in the office like, oh, I left my troubles to God. Oh, and one, I'm laughing because even I had to laugh. He was a landscaper. And I said, he had cancer of the stomach. I operated. I said, John, you need more treatment. There's still cancer cells in you. He said, yeah, I got something. I said, what? It's springtime. I'm going to go home, make the world beautiful. So when I die, I leave a beautiful world. 6 years later, my nurse handed me the chart. I said, he's dead because he never came back. She said, Bernie, open the door. I opened the door to the examining room, and there sat John. I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business. So we fixed his hernia. And let me say, he became my therapist because what he showed me was what many religions know, the beauty of nature, the sense that you're walking with God. And so I spent lots of time with him walking outdoors in nature and through his eyes, seeing how beautiful the world was.
Wow, Dr. Bernie, what an amazing story. Now, so looking at our world right now, it sounds like we're all a hot mess. We never really enjoy what's around us. Or what advice would you give to a lot of us entrepreneurs listening to this?
Well, the most important thing is, you mentioned about laughter, but the other is love. Harvard students were asked, did your parents love you? If they said yes, 35 years later, 24% had suffered an illness, a major illness in all those years. If you said, no, my parents didn't love me, 98% had suffered a major illness. The key is growing up with what I call mottos to live by from your parents. And, to feel that you're loved, that you're worth something. I mean, many of the people I know who didn't die when they're supposed to put little messages on their refrigerator, let your heart make up your mind. Yeah. My mother used to say to me, do what makes you happy. And I have to say, growing up as a kid, it drove me nuts. I thought I had terrible parents. I knew they loved me. But I mean, when I came home from school and I'd say, I got to make a decision about something, my mother would say, do what makes you happy. And Ma, I want help to decide. Yeah, do what makes you happy. I didn't think that was help, but I learned it was. I paid attention. I learned about my own feelings and what made me happy. The other was that what many spiritual leaders had learned from their parents. I had a horrible day. Everything went wrong. God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. And I love Norman Vincent Peale's mother. She said to him, Norman, if God slams one door, further down the corridor, another will be open. You see, so you're growing up with a different view of life. You don't say, oh, this is terrible. What's going to happen to me? You say, let me see what it redirects me to. And I call them spiritual flat tires. Because when you're on the way to the airport, I used to travel an awful lot, speaking all over the world. You get a flat tire. You think, well, I'm going to miss the plane. It's going to screw up my whole life. But what if you get to the airport and find out the plane you missed crashed? What do you do to the tire then? You hang it up in your living room because it saved your life. And there were many people that September 11th event who were very annoyed, because I remember hearing their stories, because, they're on the way out and the wife says, honey, I need you to take, our son to school today. Blah, blah, blah. I can't do it. So he's all upset and angry at his wife because now he's going to be late to work. But he gets there and he's alive because his wife said, please take our son to school today. I can't do it. And those are the things I've learned. Don't judge. God is redirecting you. And when you can live in that way, you'll be in the right place at the right time.
Dr. Bernie, what can we do? Okay, some of us are not very lucky with our parents who are not really being there, and we never have, the love that we needed. What can we do as a child to break that cycle? I don't want heart disease.
I'm going to show you something.
I hope you guys are loving this. I'm
about
fascinated.
30 years ago. Do you know who Jack Kevorkian was?
No. Do you know, Dan?
He was a doctor who helped people commit suicide. And those were people, it could be they were depressed, it could be people had a disease, and he'd go and give them an injection and kill them, or let them push it in. But it was, and he was unhealthy. I mean, he was into pathology and he had a problem. So it gave him power over death. All right. He ended up in prison. And I knew that he was having the problem because I helped people die, but I didn't kill them. I showed them it's okay if you need to die. Like a child who drew a purple balloon with her name in it. And I said to her mother, she's ready to go. Take her home and love her. And there were 8 pretty flowers in the picture. I said, I don't know what that means, but, we'll see. 8 days later, she woke up on her mother's birthday and said, Mom, I'm dying today as a gift to you to free you from all the trouble. See, what a difference that is to the mother saying, well, let's, inject the baby child so he doesn't have to suffer. But anyway, what I'm holding up in front of you, can you read that?
Yeah, happy Father's Day to my bonus dad.
Bonus dad, yeah. I had a depressed young lady in my office one day, and she said, you're my CD. I said, what are you talking about? You're my chosen dad. Now, the person who sent me this, because she sends me cards all the time, many decades ago when Jack Kevorkian was helping people by killing them, she called me and said, do you have Jack Kevorkian's phone number? I said, no, I don't have his phone number. And I love you. Let me become your father. And, don't commit suicide. Start a new life. Because she'd been abused by her father, had a brain tumor. I mean, she just had a lot of reasons to be dead. And Becky is alive today. And she is so sweet and sends me all these cards. And, she's my doctor now, because of how good I feel about what I shared with her. And that's the part I've learned. If we can reparent people, we can say, I love you. You don't have to say, I like you or what you're doing, but I love you. Yeah, I remember our kids saying to me, you getting a divorce? I said, why are you asking me that? You're yelling. And our neighbors are yelled and they're getting divorced. I said, I'm yelling because I don't like what you're doing, but I love you and your mother. So they stopped worrying. They knew I wasn't going to get a divorce. When I wasn't happy with their behavior, because 5 kids is not an easy job, plus a house full of pets. But they learned that they were loved. And that makes all the difference in the world. And That's what we need to do. So adopt, whether you literally adopt or just say to people, I love you, and treat them that way, you'll make a difference in their life.
Wow. Dr. Bernie, I have a question for you, a personal question. I freak out about death because I love life so much. How can I stop thinking about it? Like, I don't want to think about it because I live my life. I live my life to the fullest, but I don't want to think about death. Is that something
What is
wrong?
it that scares you? I mean, do you have a specific statement?
Yeah, because I don't want to end a life because the world is so beautiful. I'm surrounded with wonderful friends and exploring life. I don't want it to end. And to be honest with you, I started calculating that majority of my grandparents, they died when they're under 80. So I'm 42 now. So I'm kind of halfway of my life. I'm obsessing about it.
Right, then love your life, love your body. I mean it. Let it know every day. I fill my heart with love, and I tell it, now pump it out to our body and let it know we love it. See? And in my family, yeah, most of the people have died well in their 90s when they were tired of their body. See, my father said to my mother, I need to get out of here. She said, help him out of bed. I said, he's talking about his body. So we said to him, when do you want to die? He said, Sunday. We had a big party. Everybody came. My mother told stories about how they met because he lost a coin toss and had to take my mother out. And he died laughing, looking so healthy. I thought he was going to say, I changed my mind. I'll die next Sunday. But nobody in that room was afraid of death. And we're talking about grandchildren. You know, the kids are in there and they don't know what death is. But they came to me and said, is that what dying is like? Because it was just such a beautiful experience and day. And that's the part I've learned, that when you live fully, you get tired of your body. I always remember my father-in-law too. He had a spinal cord injury. And one night he said he was 98. I want him to live to be 100, say, get him in the newspaper. But when you think about it, why am I asking him to live 2 more years in his, body that isn't working normally? And he said, I'm not having dinner. I'm not taking my pills. And he died quietly in his sleep that night. So when you get tired of living, that's the time to die. And that's a personal choice. I know paralyzed people have lost arms and legs, all kinds of things, and they're enjoying life because they're still here, still participating, sharing. They have a sense of humor, still, all those things are with them. I had a near-death experience when I was 4 years old. And I have to tell you, when you're 4 years old, you're disappointed if you don't die because, boy, is that interesting. See, when you leave your body, you're perfect again. You see, you think, you're okay, except you don't have a body. And when I didn't die, I have an angel who said it wasn't time for you to die at age 4. So he did a Heimlich maneuver on me, and all the toy pieces I was choking on came out, and I started breathing again. The first words out of my mouth were, who did that? Because I thought, again, as a 4-year-old, death is fascinating. I'd rather be dead than alive. And I was upset with God, but I realized it's God. You don't have the choice and all the decisions. It's God who decides. And that man, George, my angel, has been with me ever since. And he really does the talking. That's why I never stop. He keeps me going all the time. But death isn't the problem. You'll be perfect again. You see, I mean, yes, what can be sad is leaving loved ones. My wife died 4 years ago this January. I walked in to wake her up in the morning and realized she had died in her sleep during the night, like her father, on almost the same night he died many years before she did. And to me, that's the way to go. You die in your sleep. I mean, what could be better, in your own bed at home? But the key is, have you lived a full life? And William Saroyan said it very well in his story. Love is immortal and makes all things immortal. So if you want to live forever, love somebody. Okay? That's the only way to go on and keep living. And the other is, you don't really see, what dies is your body. I noticed when I talked about myself dying and lying on the bed when I was choking on a toy, I never said, look at me. I always said the boy on the bed or the body on the bed. And I thought one day, why don't you say me? Why do you keep saying the body, the boy? And then suddenly I realized, because that's not me. That's the body. I'm not my body. You are the consciousness, the spirit, whatever words you want to use. That part of you doesn't die. And so again, when we talk about past lives, which I talked with, to you about a few minutes ago, yeah, we keep recycling in a sense. And the more we learn each time, the better we get the next time in terms of what we do and what we can accomplish. And so we go on. Yes, there are emotions, but I'll tell you, again, words from William Saroyan that I had chiseled on the headstone where my wife is buried and I will be. In the time of your life, live, so that in that time you do not contribute to the misery and sorrow of the world, but rejoice in the joy and laughter of the world. I mean, that's close to what he said. And I think that's what we all need to remember. While you're here, help, give laughter, give love. That's what we're here for, and to help others. And my father's father died when he was 12 of TB, leaving a wife and 6 kids with no money or insurance. I heard my father say, one of the best things that happened to me was my father dying when I was 12 years old. I said to him, what are you, crazy? You went through hell. I heard your stories. Why did you say that to those people? He said, because it taught me what was important about life. So he was always helping others and, doing things for others that help them to live and survive. And I'd say, you want to live forever? Yeah. Do something for someone else and you'll live in their memory forever.
Wow. Dr. Bernie, your mindset, and it's so sharp. What did you do aside from living a life and full of love? What advice would you give to anyone? To
keep working with people. I mean, yeah, it helps to have pets too. If you have a furry pets in the house, you'll live a longer, healthier life. There are a lot of studies on that. Whether you have a heart attack and have a dog in the house or no dog in the house. We talked about laughing for no reason 3 or 4 times a day. Those cancer patients live longer than ones who didn't laugh for no reason. So, yeah, I mentioned my wife died. We have 2 cats in the house. They took her place and started loving me in a way they never had before. Now, that may sound crazy, but one of them took the day shift, the other the night shift. And they spent time with me, even getting into bed with me, being with me, loving me. It was incredible, the change in them, because they knew what had happened to me. And I may add, 9 months after my wife died, my heart went irregular in terms of beat. And I knew that was my love organ. It felt the loss, and more mystical things. Yeah, my wife has communicated with me, been with me. Just one quickie. She was born on 9/9. And when I went to the emergency room, what room do you think they put me in? Put him in room 9. Then they said, we don't have a hospital room for you, which I thought, this is crazy. I'm at Yale and they can't find a bed upstairs. The next day they said, we got the room. It was 819. and 8 means a new beginning, but 8 and 1 is 9, and then is my wife's birthday. My wristband says 8996633. So I said, oh, my wife's taking care of me. All these 9s, she's letting me know she's here, so I'll be fine. And I also, we were married on the 11th, found innumerable dimes and a penny in all kinds of bizarre places, from parking lots to bird baths. I mean, it was just amazing. And our kids felt the same thing, that, well, years ago, one of the grandchildren of my mother died and I found pennies. This little pipsqueak of a kid said, "They're pennies from heaven." And where did that come from? You have a 5 or 6-year-old. When I said I found more pennies on the way back from the mailbox, "Oh, they're pennies from heaven." And boy, I believe that, that they're a way of communicating. So my comment is, we don't die. As I say, our body dies, but not our consciousness. And then you can go on and recycle with new knowledge, like killing with a sword. All right, become a surgeon and help people with a sword. Cure them, don't kill them. So all those things, I think, are a part of my life.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Vanny. What advice would you give to anyone who's still dealing with baggage from family tension, or someone like not treating you well? What advice would you give to still
like being a love warrior? Now, what does that mean? People come to you and complain, and when they're done, say, "I want you to know I love you. Sorry for all the problems I may have caused or you're going through. I love you." They don't know what to do with you then. And I mean it. I've had violent people on the street, and I've walked up to them and said, "I'm sorry for whatever's going on in your life, but I want you to know I love you." And they have all quieted down and gone away. And I get a lot of thank yous from other people on the street. And I've written about some of these things in, well, one of my books, 365 Prescriptions for the Soul. I'm still reading it every day. Each day there's another little message about life. And one of them was about a teenager who was screaming and cursing in the car behind us. And I got out of the car and the kids were yelling, "He could have a gun, don't." Because I said to the cop, "Tell him to be quiet. He's cursing and screaming." And the cop said, "That's not my job," because he was directing traffic. And so I went over to the car and I said to this boy, "I want you to know something. I love you. I'm sorry your parents don't." He made a U-turn and drove away in complete silence. And my hope is he went home and talked to his parents. But boy, did he shut down when I said, "I love you. I'm sorry your parents don't." And then I just walked back to my car and he drove away in complete silence.
Wow.
And
Now,
that's why I say we need parental love. We need to grow up with love. Go ahead. Sorry.
Was the parent there when you said that?
No. He was in the car with his girlfriend.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr.
I call it being a love warrior. Use love as your weapon. People don't know what to do with you when you say, "I love you." I mean it. I've said this to people yelling at me for something, and I just say, "I love you." And then they look at you like, "Oh, what am I going to do with him?" They want to have an argument and prove they're right. And he's saying, "I love you." Yeah.
Wow. Now, Dr. Verney, tell me about the story. How is Deepak Chopra become one of your students? Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say we're both each other's students, but there were a few doctors who were into new things and weren't afraid to talk about them. So we sought out each other for support. So Deepak was up in Boston doing a lot of mind-body things. And I knew I could talk with him, do workshops with him, and have fun with him. Brian Weiss, he wrote the book, about past lives. I mean, these were things that were not normal topics, and or the near-death experience. That's crazy. It's just something in your brain that really doesn't happen until it happens to a doctor, and then he writes a book about it. So it was the people who lived experiences that we helped each other, you see, and supported each other. And my sense of humor, too, was always talking about consciousness. Deepak speaks with an Indian accent, and many times we were speaking at the same event, and he would be on the stage and talking to everyone. And then I was the next speaker, and I'd come up and I'd say, "Oh, I am very happy to be here and to talk to all of you. I'm having a problem with the consciousness from Dr. Chopra because it's filling the stage and affecting how I am speaking to you." And people in the audience would look up like, "Is he nuts? What drugs is he on?" And, Deepak knew I'm a character, so he could laugh and smile. But, we were just close with each other because, again, if it's like the people being criticized get together, they support each other. So, I always point to the left because there's a magazine here that says interview with the controversial Dr. Siegel. Dr. Love, the controversial Dr. Siegel. That's New York Magazine. And, they came and really argued with me. And that's what the article would be about. It wasn't a nice article about him and what he's doing. It's about he's crazy, and none of it makes sense. It's not scientific. But a lot of times when I would recite things, the doctors would yell at me, "That's a poorly controlled study." Or if I recited a poem, they'd say, "Just because it rhymes doesn't make it true." A poem about cancer. And I'd say, "But why would he write that poem if it wasn't true, if he didn't see it?" For instance, in the book Cancer Ward, Solzhenitsyn, who had cancer, talks about self-induced healing. Not recovery through treatment, but actual healing. Because one of the men says, "Oh, look, I'm reading about this in a book." And the symbol for it was a rainbow-colored butterfly fluttering out of the book. Now, what doctors called those things were spontaneous remissions. Think about that. See, I meet somebody 5 years after I think he's dead, like that landscaper I may have mentioned. He said, "I'm going to go home and make the world beautiful. So if I die, I leave a beautiful world."
Well, Dr. Bernie.
Let me finish. 6 years later, he was in the office. He said, "I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business." See, I didn't say, "Oh, you were lucky." It's more, why didn't you die when you were supposed to? And it's because he was busy making the world a better place. And so he had self-induced healing. And the rainbow-colored butterfly explains it. You bust out of the cocoon, you spread your wings. The rainbow is your life in harmony because every color has meaning. So the rainbow and the butterfly really said it all so beautifully. And that's why I say to people, read fiction. Because where does Solzhenitsyn come up with something like that? It's from his intuitive wisdom, the rainbow-colored butterfly. And that's what it takes to have that kind of thing happen. You got to bust out of your old life and problems and spread your wings and create a harmony in your life. And then your body gets a new message.
Dr. Bernie, so when is your time to lay down and rest? Do you know your timeline?
I mean, you talk about literally lying down and resting.
Yes.
I mean, afternoons, I do. I like to somewhere at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, lie down and rest because I still have pets in the house, and my dog is named Rags. And I would suggest to people, everybody look that poem up on the internet. It's a powerful, moving story. And that's why when I brought him home from the shelter, I named him Rags. But he really can't see or hear anymore. So taking care of him is a day's work. And the couple of cats, when the kids were here, we had everything. We broke every zoning law because we would take in all kinds of creatures that veterinarians gave me because people, bought exotic pets and then realized we don't want these. We don't want to take care of them. So they all came to our house, goats, ducks, geese, everything was fenced in, roaming around. And let me tell you, the thing I found that was so powerful about love, all the eggs were hatched in the house in incubators. So when the creatures would pop out, they thought our children were their parents because that's who they imprint on. And when the kids in the fall would start to go to school and the school bus would pull up, all the ducks and geese would march down the driveway and try to get on the school bus with the children. It was hysterical. And thank God the bus drivers had a sense of humor. They didn't scream at me and, for interfering with their job. But the ducks and geese saw their parents going away for the day and wanted to go with them. And it touched my heart because it shows you what love does. When you imprint that way on the children and know that they're loving you and caring for you, it becomes an important part of your life.
Wow. Dan, should we do a Q&A?
Yeah.
Jody, man, what an amazing, I could listen to you forever for 24 hours, Dr. Bernie.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Bernie. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
Well, let me, I mentioned George, the angel. He uses me to talk. And let me finish with that if you need to stop. One evening, I was speaking at a spiritual center, and I realized I wasn't paying any attention to my notes. I was just talking. And I thought, well, you're doing a good job. Keep talking. First person who came up to me said, I've heard you before. That was better than usual. And I agreed. The second person said, there was a man standing in front of you for the entire lecture. So I drew his picture for you. And it was George. And then 2 years later, I spoke in that same, it's called Mercy Center, a spiritual place, and at a Christian funeral. And the healer and mystic Alga Worrell was there because she knew the man who died also. And she came up to me as the funeral was leaving and said, Bernie, are you Jewish? I said, why do you ask that? Because I spoke at a Christian funeral? No, there's a rabbi standing next to you. And she described George in complete detail, with all the garments he's wearing that relate to our religion. And that blew my mind because I had met him in my imagination, in a meditation at a workshop. They said, you'll meet somebody on a path who will be a guide for you. And who walks up and says, my name is George. And I was very disappointed. It wasn't, Abraham or Jesus or Moses or somebody with a reputation. George. Okay. But he's been with me for my lifetime. And when people see him, that convinces me. And I may add, see, if you're not normal, people talk to you about being not normal. So I was known at the hospital as this crazy doctor, but that's when people talk to me. And these were not even my patients. They would say, can you come to my room? I need to talk to you. Some of them were stories about, I've had an organ transplant and the person whose organs are in me, he's talking to me. And believe me, those are true stories. It's amazing what this young woman. She even wrote a book called A Change of Heart. Her name was Claire Sylvia, because she had a heart-lung transplant. And the young man who died, well, the funny part was, let me just say that and then stop that story. She said, I woke up after surgery and they said, what do you want to eat? She said, chicken McNuggets and a beer. She said, I've never had those things. Why did I say that? Well, she learned it was the young man who had died in a motorcycle accident who was in her now and a big part of her. So, and another of my patients is a mystic. And she came in one day and said, I learned you're not a normal doctor, so I brought a message for you from Frank. And Frank was a doctor friend who had just died. And when I called his wife and said, here's a message from Frank, she said, oh my God, that's what he used to say every time he left your meeting. So, oh, and I may add, when my wife died on Friday, Sunday morning, my friend Monica called me because I was waiting to see if she would call. She said, Bernie, everything's fine. Bobby's back with her family again. A lovely lady who was an opera singer called, got in touch with me to say Bobby's fine and back with the family again. And who was an opera singer? My wife's mother, who had died a few years earlier. Now, when Monica can say things like that, I don't question her ability and her experience. So I've learned that there are mystics who can communicate with the dead, and I don't question it or doubt it.
Right, Jadine, you have a question?
I do. I'm going to just read the question that Roger Cute has here. He's in Clubhouse, Bernie. So I'm just going to read his question for you. His question to you is, how important is physical touch in showing love to infants, children, and adults? Saying you love them is important, but can showing love change a person's health, both physical and mental?
Yes. Touch is vital, especially to infants. And I mean, so many times when newborns are dying at the hospital and they finally say, there's no point keeping him or her in isolation. The parents can now come in and touch their child. There was one in which the mother took it up, put it on her bare breast, and the baby, who had been, almost dead, began to suckle at her breast and came back to life. I know it also as a personal experience. I was born to a woman who was told not to have any children because you're so sick it could kill you, the stress of pregnancy. She had a severe case of hypothyroidism, but she did her mother a favor and said, well, I'm going to get pregnant and give her a grandchild. She wasn't strong enough to deliver me. They had to pull me out after my mother screamed for a couple of weeks in the hospital in labor. And my mother said, they gave me a purple melon. They didn't give me a child. Now, because I was so battered from the labor and the forceps on my head and everything. So they hid me in a carriage, covered it behind the house. And when I heard this later in my life, because see, you don't question a covered carriage. If you look in the family album, you figure, all right, I'm sleeping. But she said, we hid you so we wouldn't upset people. I said, how did I survive then? If you don't touch a child, it's not going to make it. The brain doesn't develop. It doesn't gain weight. She said, oh, my mother took you, poured oil all over you, and pushed everything back where it belonged 4 and 5 times a day. And so I then realized I was the most loved kid on the planet. My grandmother is loving me, massaging me every few hours. And let me tell you how those body memories exist in all of us. 50 years later, for the first time, not my first massage, but the first time a woman gave me a complete massage with a shaved head, I became an infant again. I could feel it happening. Her hands, the oil, because her husband was the one who always massaged us, but he was too busy to do my wife and I. So the wife took over. I opened my eyes feeling wonderful. and the room was filled with dozens of people. I said, "What the hell are you all doing here?" "I'm getting a massage." Her husband said, "We thought you had a heart attack or a stroke. You were gone. We couldn't communicate with you." I said, "I know. I became an infant again." And that's why I know our body has all those memories of our life. And so, yeah, I'd say my grandmother kept me alive, and touch can keep you alive. And that's why when we isolate kids in an intensive care unit, we're also hurting them. They need to be massaged and people near them. Even one study of animals, I forgot what the disease was, but they were injecting them with something to kill them. And they found that the rabbits that were on the lowest cages had a better survival rate than the ones who were in the upper cages. And they realized that's because when people went by, they talked to them or reached in and petted them, but you couldn't reach the ones who were way up high. And that impressed the people who did the study, that it affected the survival rate just to have contact with someone. And I may add, the reverse is true too. As I said, when you pet a furry creature, your internal hormones, bonding hormones, go up too, and it changes you.
Well, Bernie, I'm just going to note, I grew up on a farm, and we had cattle. And then, if there was a baby calf that was born, I mean, the first thing you did was grab the gunny sacks and just rub, all over that animal. And it's amazing how many, we were able to revive just by rubbing and getting them moving. And I had 5 daughters, and that just instinctively, when they were born, the first thing I said, before, as soon as that baby comes out, I want them on my chest, like immediately. Like, I don't want them cleaned up. I don't want the umbilical cord. Like, you pull them and put them on my chest, and all of them. And to this day, when my daughters come home or I'm around them, they're like, "Will you massage my back? Will you massage my head?" Because every time I breastfed, and every time I did, I would, massage their temples, and just always was touching them. And we didn't immunize. My kids made it to school, like they always got the award for being there every day. And they had no health problems growing up. So I think a lot of just basic Mother Nature care and instincts is a lot better than some of the other things that our world has presented.
Yeah, I have to tell you this story. We had 3 sons, and I told my wife I want a daughter. And she said, "I had enough." But I kept after her, so she became pregnant again, learned she was going to have twins. And she has a wonderful sense of humor. She said, "If it's 2 more boys, I'm not coming home from the hospital." One was a girl. Well, you talk about mind body. I knew which day my wife was going to give birth with every single pregnancy, because it was always a meaningful number day. Like, I was born on the 9th, my wife she was born on the 9th, I'm the 14th. Our first son was the same month as my wife, but the 23rd day, the sum of 9 and 14. The second one was 2 times the day we were married, on the 22nd. It was just impossible. I knew when she would have the kids, mind, body. But when it came with delivering the twins, it was into December, and I couldn't figure out what numbers would fit. And then my wife said to me, "I'm not going to be in the hospital on Christmas." So I said, "Oh, I know. She'll have them the next day." And that's what she did. She gave birth the next day. And we named our daughter Carolyn because of all the Christmas carols. But it really showed me again how much mind-body stuff goes on in everything that we're dealing with.
So I have 2 born in December. Well, we used to only have sex twice a year, because I had 2 in September and 2 in December. So then Mackenzie came along, and we have an August birthday. So, but I've got a December 21st and December 24th. And I always say Taylor is my biggest Christmas present that I ever opened up. But I did know that I was having girls. Like, there was no doubt about it. And at the 5th one, my husband at the time said, they're all out of the same gene pool, just so you guys know too. He said to the doctor, he said, he goes, do you think you're going to give me a boy this time? And he looked at me and he said, well, she's been saying a girl the whole time. And he goes, I'm going with her because she's got a pretty good success rate on that. So. But I do have another question. This is from Ricky Thorpe. And she said, please, first of all, she wants to thank you for all of the work that you've done and helped transmute our world. She is greatly appreciative of that. And then her question is, if you could teach the entire world just one concept, what would that be? Great question.
It's, to love one another, have faith and love. I'd say the faith, the hope, and the love go together. That when you put those three things together, marvelous things happen because it's built into us. Again, when you cut your finger, you don't say, oh, I'm going to bleed to death. You put a Band-Aid over it and it heals. How does it know what to do? So my concept of God is loving, intelligent, conscious energy, so that all those things are available to us. And when you have faith, when you can love, and that's loving your life, and your body and other people, all those things, your body gets a message and amazing things can happen. I mean, I've had people whose cancers went away when, quote, I left my troubles to God. So again, you see what an effect it had on her body to have that kind of peace. God is in touch with all her troubles now and taking care of things. And as I said, when I would say to people, why didn't you die when you were supposed to? Everyone had a story to tell you about changes. So their body literally got new messages. And the heart is in many ways like a brain. There's a book called The Heart's Code by Paul Pearsall, that the heart gives messages to your body too. So when your heart is filled with love, your body does everything it can to keep you going. I mean, we're all going to die someday. And I'm not worried about dying because, if you're leaving a body that you don't enjoy anymore, you'll feel great. And then you can recycle if you want to with the knowledge that you picked up in this life and use it. So it's an ongoing process. And I can't remember who said that, but when you die, you become dreamless, unalive, and perfect. See, when you leave your body, you don't take your troubles with you and you feel whole again.
I love that. And she said, thank you very much for spreading that because she really wanted to know deeper on, what one concept you would have. I guess one of the questions I have for you is with all the experiences that you've had throughout your life, has there ever been one where you haven't been able to figure out? Like, is there one that's kind of leaving kind of that question of what did that mean? Or have you always been able to kind of, get an answer from it?
I think that I've always had answers when I stopped and just considered it all. So I don't really have questions now, that are unanswered and I don't know about life. And I'm not worried about dying. See, the thing that impresses me is talking to all the people who have had the near-death experience. The group called IANDS, IANDS, Institute for the Advancement of Near-Death Studies or Stories. And these are people who are sharing their near-death experience. And when you hear the things that they experience in common, you begin to realize this is for real. They're not all making up this crazy stuff. And so I'm impressed with that. And I, as I say, my mind is open. When the time comes, it'll come, and I'll leave my body. But if I've done something worthwhile while I'm here, then my effect will be here. I'm immortal in that sense, through the love, through the teaching. But life is a mystery. That's why I'm saying my next book, I just want to write about all the things I've experienced. Life, a mystical miracle. How can I explain an angel shows up when I'm 4 years old to save my life? And then so many other things. I mean, they were all coincidence, that somebody says to me on the telephone, why are you living this life? And I go into a trance. I wasn't searching out. I wasn't some kind of nutcase trying to have all these things happen. They just all happened. I mean, even once in the operating room, because I'm not a normal doctor, patient's heart stops. Anesthesiologist said, I can't get it going. I'm calling for a stretcher to take him to the morgue. What does Siegel do, or George through Siegel? He yells out, Johnny, it's not your time yet. Come on back. What happened? The patient's heart started beating again, and he recovered. And the anesthesiologist looked at me and said, I like working with you.
Can I ask what color your eyes
How
are?
many doctors would ever yell something crazy like that out in an operating room? So, and my patients, it became a compliment. That's one of Siegel's crazy patients. They had no reactions to radiation, no reactions to chemotherapy, no pain after surgery. The nurses, the anesthesiologists, the radiation therapists, they all thought, all these crazy people, but then they realized they're not crazy, that they're having, well, as one woman said, I get out of the way and I let it go to my tumor. She was being radiated and had no side effects, and they thought the machine was broken until they saw my name in the chart. So, and to quote another oncologist, a woman who was told she'd be dead in 2 months was brought up here by a relative so I would save her life, and not even telling me. So I asked my oncologist friend to see her because she had leukemia. I said, it's not something for me to operate on. He saw her and said, I agree, she has 2 months to live, but I know you and your crazy patient, so I'll give her hope. 6 weeks later, she was in complete remission. And where does that come from, And that's why the doctors loved working with these crazy patients, because you never knew what was going to happen. So she went home with no sign of cancer to drive her doctor crazy.
Dr. Verney,
Go
I
ahead.
have a very important question. I grew up in a culture where feelings are not being shown, issues are being covered under the rug. And I feel really bad. A lot of people, even in my family, died with no closure. What would you advise that kind of situation? No one talks about it.
Well, I'd say for yourself to do what makes you happy. You don't have to fit in with the family, because if what you do they see is effective, they will be changed by it. Say, in other words, live the sermon. That's a better way of saying it. And then they see it works. They start doing what you're doing instead of arguing with you. The other is keep loving, letting them know, get them some of my books and give it to them to read. To understand it's real, about consciousness. And because one of the people I thought was a nutcase is a friend, Amelia Kincaid. I met her at a meeting and she said, I talk to animals. I'm an animal intuitive. I thought, oh, come on, lady. But while she was in California and Africa, she told me where to find lost pets in Connecticut. Now, how did she do it? By looking through the animal's eyes, their consciousness. So I learned about talking to animals through my consciousness. And, that's the key in all of this. It's our consciousness and the message it's giving our body and the people around us. So there is survivor behavior. See, when people are afraid of doing it wrong, I send 100 letters to people with cancer saying, you want to live a longer, better life, come to a meeting. 12 women showed up. What the hell is going on? I expect 200 or 300. I thought they'd bring friends and family members. And they were afraid. Why? Well, you tell me I need to read a book. You want me to draw a picture. You want me to answer questions about my life. I don't have time, and I'm not an artist. And yeah, that's the sad part, see? And then you get the ones who are inspired and come. And they became my teacher. Here's the quote from the lady whose words changed my life. We were at a meeting together, and I was the only doctor in the room. And I thought it was a meeting for doctors. So I went there. It was filled with cancer patients and me. She said, you're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me. So I need to know how to live between office visits. That changed my life. I started support groups to help people live. Then you notice they don't die when they're supposed to, and they start teaching me about survivor behavior. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I was the controversial, because I was working with patients, not the disease. See, Jung has said so much about this hundreds of years before. The diagnosis helps the doctor, but it doesn't help the patient. For it alone shows human background. See, well, let me go back. The diagnosis helps the doctor, but doesn't help the patient. For there, the key thing is the story. For it alone shows human background and human suffering. And only at that point can the doctor's therapy begin to operate. So doctors are treating a disease, not a person. And I have in the room I'm sitting in lots of famous paintings where patients are in bed and the doctor's sitting there like this. What are you doing? I'm thinking, what else could I do for you? Why don't you hold the hand? See? Yeah.
Well, Dr. Siegel, I do have another question. First question I'm going to ask, what color are your eyes?
Blue.
I have to ask and that's going to lead into this question from Jackie. The one thing that I've always made a connection or always heard that anybody that has had an encounter with an angel, that they say the eyes are blue. Do you have knowledge on that?
No, I don't know about eye color and angels. All right. If George tells me, I'll let you know.
I was going to say, you better do a study on that, because everyone that I've talked to, my dad had beautiful blue eyes and I have blue eyes. And when we were talking about the girls, I was actually told that I should probably go.
Well, let me tell you what I do connect with. See, I got a message already. Think of the blue sky. Think of the blue sky.
Yep.
For me, that's God. And now that how quickly George responded. Yeah, the blue is that connection with God and that feeling, because I always said, I was just looking out the window, that who decided the sky should be blue and leaves green and the sun, the light yellow? But it's when you study colors, you realize, see, the energy of yellow, the blue of God, the green of life, of growth. Yeah. And the purple is red, the passion color, and blue again. And you get the spiritual color. So every color has meaning, and numbers have meaning too. And so do colors. And I'd say blue, yeah, it's a good connection to God.
Yeah. And so when I first found out that, when I got married, they actually told me to go look at adoption because my cycles, I know this is a little too much information for some of you men, but I would go 6 to 8 months without a cycle. And they told me to start looking at adoption because I probably would never conceive. And I said, well, we'll leave that up to God. And 5 children later, I guess we know who had the upper hand there.
No, I worked with a lot of women who were infertile, telling them to visualize what they wanted to happen, not being in the panic, because that's, what helps keep you infertile. When, it's never going to work, I'm in a panic. Every time you have intercourse, it's, an intellectual thing, trying to become pregnant, not making love. All that is just crazy. But when you can shift that concept, communicating with your body, being loving, amazing things happen. Yeah, one lady, all these things that I've done because I've helped people. She had cancer, so she knew me. She called me from the hospital. I'm having a miscarriage. Could you come and help me just get through this? So I go over to the hospital. I walked in. The room was horrible. Her family and the doctors and nurses were there, all grieving and, this is terrible. What's going to happen? And what came out of me, I'm sure it was George, get out of here. All of you, get out of here. And they looked at me like, who the hell are you? But I was so violent, they all ran out of the room. And then I turned to her, shut the door. I said, look, we're going to do a meditation. You're going to love the child, love your uterus, send it love, quiet it down, and let's do that now. In a few minutes, the labor stopped, and she went on to full term and delivered. And, everybody was shocked when we let them back in the room and she's no longer in labor and everything's fine. But then a phone call came to me a few months later. Bernie, I gave birth to a boy. We're naming him after you, but we're Irish. So his name is Brady.
No.
And I loved it. And I know in a past life, I was Irish. So for me, it was perfect. All those things that happened.
Well, this just opens up to Jackie Brennigan's question here. And first of all, she has to note that she has green eyes and she's the Irish angel. So we'll start out with that. But her question is, how can we connect with our own angels?
Well, you have to be quiet. Stop thinking. And I found that it started literally my angel talking to me when I would do repetitive activities that I didn't have to think about. Riding my bike. I used to do a lot of running, ran a lot of marathons. So I'd be running down the road and I'd hear a voice talking to me. And I would always do what the voice told me to do. And I assumed, well, God is telling me something and talking to me. I know now it's my angel doing that. So I'd say to the person, quiet yourself. So, and if you want to go for a walk, fine, but do something where you don't have to think about what you're doing or what's on your mind, like, I got to pay a bill. I got to go shopping. I got a quiet time, and make that time every day and listen. And you can hear a voice. You can find something that tells you, I have lost things, and my wife, who is dead, has returned them to me. And what I mean by that? I can't find it. Nobody in the family can find it. One of our sons left the house, came back a few minutes later, said, I heard mom's voice tell me where to find your cell phone. And I went over and there it was. And he brought it in the house. And this was outdoors. And I have no idea how it got there. I hadn't been in that place. So she came across it and put it there for us. And so again, quiet your mind. Then you can hear the voice speaking to you. See, the day my father died, the voice asked me, how did your parents meet? I said, I don't know. then ask your mother when you get to the hospital. And that's what turned it into a beautiful day, because my mother said, oh, your father lost a coin toss and had to take me out. And I mean, he died looking so healthy. I thought he was going to change his mind and say, this has been so much fun. Let's do it again next Sunday, you know? But again, consciousness, the last person who said, I'm coming to say goodbye to Grandpa, that's the 24th person, came into the room. That's when he took his last breath. So he knew everybody was here. He can go now. Yeah. And it's quieting your mind. That's the key I've learned all the time. That's when you can receive things, when you're not worrying, thinking, what should I doing? And then you get the message.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for all of your time and energy, but where are we at on time? Because we have a couple more questions here.
Yeah, well, at 1 o'clock, I have another commitment. So as long as we finish, say, 10 minutes before the hour. But and let me say one other thing that I know my wife is also with me. Two things. One was she kissed me goodnight after she died with breath. I would hear something like a candle being blown out. I'm lying in bed and I hear a puff, and then I would feel a breeze on my face. And there's no living thing in the room. And that went on for several weeks. Now I get such a kick out of it. She was born on 9/9. When I need to, when I'm supposed to get out of bed and I haven't, I get a message from her. Look at the clock. And what time is it? 9:09. And I know she's saying, get out of bed.
Dr. Verney, sounds like you guys had an amazing story. How did you have that love story that she's still there with you? And the way how you share about your wife, there's like a amount of love around it.
Yeah, we had something that most people never experience. We were like one. I mean, I noticed one day or evening when we were sitting in the kitchen that we never need to do anything or go anywhere. We're perfectly happy just sitting here. I mean, yeah, we traveled around the world speaking and doing. My wife did one-liners, did comedy. And boy, you could see the change in the audience. It taught me a lot. Because one evening, instead of taking her chair in the audience, I stayed on the stage because it was awkward to climb down. And I noticed the change in the audience. After 20 minutes of laughter, everybody looked younger and healthier and sitting up taller. So I really used to point that out to everybody to really pay attention to the benefits of that laughter. And that was her job, to make everybody laugh. She had lots of one-liners that were wonderful. I could tell you a few of them if you want to before we're done.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Verney, is some kind of trauma lead to an adult being OCD that's affecting your life around you? Can you visualize that and heal yourself through meditation, or is there something a person can do?
Yeah, you can relive it and see it with a different ending. What I find, or also letting go, learning to forgive. I've learned some of it from my father because of his difficult childhood. The ability to say no is a survival quality. But one of our dogs attacked a rabbit that I had in the house. I thought they knew each other after a week or so, and stepped out of the house and came back and found that the dog had attacked the rabbit. And it broke my heart, that it was my fault. But 2 weeks later, I went out to bring the rabbit in as it was getting dark, and I couldn't find the rabbit in the front yard. And it's fenced in. So they're all healthy. And I thought, this is crazy. I don't know where she's hiding. But I went over to pet this dog. His name is Furphy because he has very thick fur. And I noticed some black fur, which the rabbit was, named Smudge. And I lift up Furphy, and there's Smudge lying underneath him, hiding from me. And I thought, wow, he's threatened her life. And within 3 weeks, he's her best friend, hiding her so I don't bring her in the house at night and let her stay out with all the other animals. And so she taught me about forgiveness. And I can feel that when I get angry at some people, because let me put it in a very practical way. You lend somebody money. They tell you, I'll have it back here in 3 or 4 weeks. And 3 or 4 years later, they haven't paid you back. Now, you can be miserable, call a lawyer, do all kinds of things. But I've learned from the rabbit, forgive the guy. And then I'm free. And I wish them well. Because what I'm looking for is a friend, not necessarily the dollars. So I've made a lot of friends with people who have never paid me back, but they have paid me back by becoming a friend. But when they won't communicate and won't pay back, I feel sorry for them. I know they're miserable, and I just forgive them and let go. So it isn't hurting me.
Kate, I've got one question from Jimmy Hashemiya here, and he said, thank you. He would like to know your viewpoint on child psychology and the emerging school psychologist. Do you have an opinion on what they should be doing in schools? Great question.
When you use the word Kyle?
This is from Jimmy. So his question is, what is your viewpoint on child psychology and the emerging school psychologists? Do you have an opinion on what they should be doing in the schools?
Loving everybody. I don't know who Kyle is, so I don't know what Kyle.
Child.
Oh, child psychology. Okay.
But I guess Kyle could be a child.
All right. But, it's loving is what it is. Not through punishing necessarily, but through loving, letting them know the trouble. See, a child makes trouble to get attention. I mean, I have a friend who is working on love now. Scarlett is her first name, and her son was killed in that school shooting, in Connecticut. And now she's working on helping bring children up loved. See, instead of being angry and resentful and bitter and hating that man, she's helping others. And I'd say the same thing to the child psychologist. Become a chosen parent. When the child comes in, say, look, I'll be your CM or CD, chosen mother, chosen dad. I love you. I want to help you. So you don't need to make trouble to get attention in school. Well, you have my attention. I love you. And that's what you need to let them know. I've had kids, patients more, where I'd say, I know you're a troublemaker, so you get attention. Well, one woman was in my office. She was having surgery endlessly. I said, I'm not going to operate on you. You're punishing yourself. She drove doctors crazy until they operated on her. It's like saying my knee hurt, my hemorrhoids, it didn't matter. Every few months, another operation. I said, I'm not going to operate on you. You want to come in and talk? I'll help you. And the insurance company wrote and said, we don't pay surgeons for talking. I pointed out to them, I saved them a lot of money. And they wrote back and said, okay, keep talking. But I say the same thing in the school, that
a lot of schools are starting to do meditation.
Yeah.
And not a lot, but a few. And I would like to see more of that, because just getting kids to be quiet.
I got a great idea. I have a picture of one of us, and you can't tell who it is. What's it a picture of?
Say it again, Dr. Bernie.
I have a photograph of one of us, and you cannot tell which one of us it is. What's it a picture of?
A silhouette of just silence?
No.
Okay.
Where are we all alike? The adults have trouble with that. Kids don't. Say that to somebody in second grade. Where are we all alike? Inside.
The heart.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's why I say when we say Black Lives Matter, yeah, show a picture of somebody's insides and say all lives matter. We're all the same inside. And I love doing that in front of crowds when I'm standing with a Black friend. And I say, you can't tell which one of us this photograph is of. And they look at me like I'm nuts. But then you hold up a picture of the liver or your heart. Yeah, we're all the same color inside. And that's what a school therapist ought to have, is a picture of a child's inner organs, from the neck to the pelvis, all our internal organs. And a sign above it that says, you know, you want to win a contest? Tell us which child in the school this is a picture of, you know? And you say, well, we can't. Right. We're all the same color inside.
Wow.
Kate and Dan, I do have one other question, but I think we're going to be cut short on time. So maybe we can.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Yeah, Dan, do you have a question?
No, I know we have to go. So yeah, no, I appreciate it, Dr. Bernie. But before we go though, just tell people, where can they connect with you? And I know you have some incredible books. You have a new book coming out. Is there somewhere people can go to learn more about you?
Yeah, there's the best place probably is my website, Bernie Siegel, Siegel, MD.com. Because on the opening page over on the right, there are a couple of phone call groups I run now because COVID canceled, you know, all the meetings, and they could call in and become a part of one of our support groups. There's one happening, let's see, yeah, tomorrow. We're having a group that you can phone into. And at the beginning of the month, we do another one on a Friday. So that's one thing. All my books are listed there. There's an article, Deceiving People into Health, that shows how important the mind is, because I did a lot of work with children and I lied to them all the time for their benefit. See, you tell a child an alcohol sponge is going to numb their skin. Oh, you're lucky they made these new little pads. Now it cleans your skin and it makes it numb. You won't feel the needle. 80% of the kids say, oh, why don't the other doctors do that? 20% said, I felt it. Oh, bad sponge. But there's nothing wrong with lying to people for their benefit. And that's how I trained parents also when they were taking their children home, how to talk to them so that they induced, you know, better behavior as well as better feelings and didn't have as much trouble worrying about the doctor or the treatment or what was going to happen. Yeah. So when you hear side effects of things, they're hypnotizing you into having them. But if you don't get told that, you can say, oh, I had a headache. Did that go? No, that's not from the pill. You know, you don't have to worry. So don't tell people all the negative stuff for them to worry about. Tell them all the good stuff that's going to happen. And especially when you're with children, when you're seen as an authority, the doctor or the parents, it works. And if doctors were trained, as well as at schools, you know, if the social workers and others were trained, how do you talk to people to induce good results? And that's something that I learned in the office. I didn't scare people in the operating room. I got them to smile and laugh. I started playing music in the operating room, talking to people under anesthesia. Those are part of the reasons I was this crazy doctor. They're anesthetized. What the hell is the point of talking and playing music? But they woke up and let us know they heard it because they would comment on things that were said while they were anesthetized. And boy, did that change the anesthesiologist. So all those things are significant.
Incredible. So BernieSiegelMD.com. Check out, you have some incredible books. You have your new group, and BernieSiegelMD.com. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. This is just
Thank you so
amazing.
much. What an
Yeah,
amazing.
we're so honored.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you, Dr. Bernie. Bye.